My dad stole my college fund for my stepsister, so my grandparents gave me $1M. Now he's demanding I share it. I've lost count of how many Reddit stories I've read, those over-the-top, dramatic tales that make you wonder if real life could ever be that outrageous. And yet, somehow, my own life ended up feeling like one of those drawn-out, ridiculous sagas. I never imagined I'd be in a situation like this, trying to piece everything together, but the last few months have left me completely lost. Maybe sharing my story here will help me untangle the mess. To understand what's happening now, I have to start at the beginning. My mom passed away when I was just 14. Cancer, fast, brutal, and merciless. Losing her was like having the ground ripped out from under me. No matter how much time passed, the wound never really healed. My parents had been together for 16 years, and despite all the ups and downs life threw at them, their love never wavered. I used to look at them and think they'd grow old side by side. It never even crossed my mind that life had other plans. But my mom, she had always been the kind of person who thought ahead. Even in her final months, she was thinking about my future. She set up an education fund, pulling together her life insurance and the savings she and Dad had built up over the years. She wanted to make sure I'd be okay, that no matter what happened, I'd have a chance at a good education without financial struggles. And it wasn't just a little cushion, it was enough to cover all of college, even graduate school if I wanted. She made sure of that. After she was gone, my dad was a wreck. He threw himself into work, drowning in it like a man desperate to escape his own grief. For 2 years, that was his life, working himself to exhaustion, then coming home just long enough to make sure I was getting by. I did my best to be there for him, and after a while, I even encouraged him to start dating again. I could see how lonely he was, how much of himself he had lost. He wasn't the same man anymore. Eventually, he met Jocelyn at a work event. She was 43, divorced, and had a daughter, Tessa, who was just a year older than me. When Dad told me he was seeing someone, I wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, I wanted him to be happy. On the other, I had no idea what this new chapter in our lives would look like. I'd heard enough horror stories about wicked stepmothers and nightmare step-siblings to be wary. But Jocelyn wasn't like that. She was warm, easygoing, and never made me feel like I didn't belong. Even Tessa and I got along well enough. We weren't super close, but we had a few shared interests and managed to be friendly. For a while, it seemed like things were going smoothly. Jocelyn made an effort, and Tessa didn't seem to mind that her mom was now sharing a life with my dad. For the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe we could actually be a family. Then, little by little, things started to shift. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable. Dad began spending more and more time with Tessa. He was there for all her school events, cheering her on at games, helping her with her college applications. And I tried to be understanding. Tessa's dad wasn't in the picture, so maybe it was natural for my father to step up and support her. But what stung was how he was slowly drifting away from me, like I had somehow become less important. It started with small things. He missed one of my school plays because Tessa had a soccer game on the same night. Then he forgot about a project I had specifically asked for his help with because he was too wrapped up in Tessa's extracurriculars. And when I finally worked up the courage to say something about it, he just brushed me off. Told me I was overreacting. Made me feel like my feelings didn't matter. Then came the moment that shattered what little faith I had left in him. Almost a year ago, on Tessa's birthday, I got into a minor accident. Nothing life-threatening, but bad enough to land me in the hospital. When Dad finally showed up, 2, maybe 3 hours after getting the call, he wasn't worried. He wasn't relieved that I was okay. No, he was angry. Annoyed that my accident had ruined Tessa's birthday plans. Upset that they had to cut their dinner short because of me. That was the breaking point. It wasn't just about that one night. It was about every moment leading up to it, the slow, painful realization that I didn't matter to him anymore, at least not the way I used to. After that, I accepted the truth, things would never be the same. I pulled away, put distance between myself and the family he was so eager to build. But nothing could have prepared me for what he did next. By the time I graduated high school, I had already come to terms with the fact that I was on my own. I started looking into scholarships, part-time jobs, anything that would help me pay for college. I knew I couldn't rely on him, but I never imagined he would take it one step further. Somehow, in his infinite wisdom, my father decided that the education fund my mother had painstakingly built for me, the money she left behind to make sure I had a future, wasn't mine anymore. He gave it to Tessa. His reasoning? She needed it more, and I, apparently, would figure something out. He didn't even try to justify it. He acted like it was the most natural thing in the world, as if the fact that my mother had carefully planned that money for me didn't matter at all. Like it was no big deal. I was beyond devastated. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. About the bond one thought I still had with my father. My mother had poured her love into that fund, making sure I wouldn't have to struggle, that I could chase my dreams without financial burden. And in one careless decision, my dad took that all away, handed it to someone else without a second thought. It wasn't even about Tessa. It was about my father, the man who was supposed to protect me. The man who was supposed to have my back. And in that moment, I realized he never would. After that, I was done. I stopped speaking to him altogether. Whatever was left of our relationship had crumbled completely, and there was no putting it back together. But what I didn't expect was my grandparents stepping in the way they did. They had always been my quiet support system, watching from the sidelines but never interfering unless absolutely necessary. But when they found out what my dad had done, something inside them snapped. I had never seen them so furious. Especially my granddad. My granddad had always been the steady one. The voice of reason. The man who never lost his cool, no matter the situation. But not this time. And my grandma, who spent her whole life keeping the peace, was right there beside him, just as outraged. They couldn't believe what my dad had done. They didn't just disapprove, they were furious. And they made it crystal clear that they weren't about to sit back and let him get away with it. After I laid everything out for them, the betrayal, the stolen education fund, the way Dad had treated me like an afterthought, my granddad didn't say much. He just got up, walked away for a moment, and when he came back, he was holding his checkbook. And then, just like that, he placed it in my hand. A check. $1 million. Signed. Dated. Ready to go. I couldn't speak. I just stared at it, trying to process what was happening. They told me this money had always been for me. They had been saving it for years, quietly looking out for me, just in case a day like this ever came. They had seen the way things were shifting long before I had. And they had prepared for it. I had no idea they had been watching over me like that. No idea they had been waiting in the wings, ready to step in when I needed them most. It wasn't just money, it was a safety net. A second chance. Proof that I wasn't as alone as I had started to feel. For the first time in a long time, I had something secure. Something mine. But, of course, my dad found out. He always did. It was like he had a built-in radar for whenever things started looking up for me. And instead of being relieved that I had a way forward, he was livid. I remember that phone call so clearly. His voice, sharp and cutting. The accusations. The entitlement. He didn't say, "I'm happy for you." He didn't say, "I'm glad you'll be okay." No. He called me selfish. Said I was only thinking about myself. And then, with the sheer audacity of a man who had already taken what was meant for me, he demanded that I split the money with Tessa. "It's not fair," he said. "She has nothing, and now you have more than enough." I almost laughed. The nerve. He had already stolen my education fund, money my mother had put aside for me, without a second thought. And now he wanted me to hand over the only thing I had left? I told him no. Flat out. Without hesitation. I had already lost enough. This money, this gift from my grandparents, was my last shot at taking back my future. I didn't owe Tessa a damn thing. I didn't owe him anything, either. But Dad wasn't done. Not even close. He went on a full-blown guilt trip, using every manipulative tactic he could think of. His words were dripping with disappointment, designed to make me doubt myself, to make me bend. "Your mother would be ashamed of you," he said. "She would have wanted you to help Tessa." He painted this picture of her, this saintly, selfless woman who would have given up everything to help someone in need. He made it sound like I was betraying her memory by keeping the money for myself. And for a second, it worked. Doubt crept in. Maybe I was being selfish. I mean, my grandparents had given me more than enough. Would it really hurt to share a little? Maybe my mom would have wanted me to help Tessa. The thought twisted inside me, gnawing away at my resolve. But then I remembered. I remembered the years of being cast aside. Of Dad choosing Tessa over me again and again. Of being treated like an afterthought while he built a new life with his new family. I remembered how forgotten I had felt. And just like that, the guilt vanished. No. I didn't owe them anything. My mother had saved that money for me. And if she were here, she would have been furious at how Dad had handled everything. She wouldn't have wanted me to let myself be taken advantage of. So I stood my ground. I told Dad, clear as day, that I wasn't giving Tessa a single dime. He could call me selfish. He could guilt-trip me all he wanted. It wasn't going to work. Not this time. I had spent years letting him make me feel like I wasn't important. Like my needs didn't matter. But not anymore. This was mine. And I wasn't giving it up. But even now, even after shutting him down, I can't shake this feeling in the back of my mind. Tessa won't stop texting me. Every single day, message after message. She says she understands, but she keeps begging me to reconsider. She keeps reminding me that she always thought we had a special bond, that she never wanted things to end up like this. And I don't know. Am I being too harsh? Should I have given her something? She didn't ask to be caught in the middle of this. She didn't choose this mess. Maybe I am wrong for holding it against her. Maybe Dad's right. Maybe my mom would be disappointed in me. Maybe I should be more generous. But then again, how much is enough? How much more do I have to lose before I'm allowed to say no? How much more do I have to sacrifice before I'm allowed to put myself first? I don't know anymore. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe the pain and betrayal are clouding my judgment. But after everything I've been through, I just can't bring myself to give in. Not this time. So here I am, asking for an outside perspective. Am I wrong? Am I being too cruel? Should I share the money with Tessa, even after everything? Or am I right to finally stand my ground? Because honestly, I don't know anymore. Update 1. It's been a couple of days since my last update, and a lot has happened. After everything with my dad, I decided to move in with my grandparents for a while. I needed space. I needed to be somewhere safe. Somewhere where I wasn't being manipulated, guilt-tripped, or treated like an afterthought. They've always been my safety net. But right now, they're the only ones I trust. I told them everything: how Dad gave away my education fund, how he demanded I split the money, how he had the audacity to use my mother's memory against me. I thought I was angry. But my grandparents? They were livid. And that's when it really hit me: I wasn't overreacting. I was right to feel betrayed. For those of you asking, yes, these are my paternal grandparents. Which, honestly, just makes this whole thing even worse for my dad. Because now he knows his own parents are siding with me. And that has to sting. But you know what? He deserves it. He's been so caught up in his new family that he's completely forgotten about the one who was there for him first. But my grandparents haven't forgotten. And they're standing by me. And that just makes Dad even angrier. My grandparents have always been wise, and lately, their advice has been the only thing keeping me grounded. The first thing they insisted on? Hiring a financial advisor. At first, I wasn't convinced. It felt excessive, like something billionaires do, not someone like me. I mean, sure, it was a lot of money, but did I really need a professional just to keep track of it? But the more they explained, the more I saw their point. For one, I'm young. I've never managed anything close to this kind of money before. Without proper guidance, it'd be easy to make bad decisions or even lose it all. And after everything that's happened, the last thing I want is to end up back at square one because of a mistake I didn't see coming. Then there was the other reason. After seeing how easily my dad took advantage of me, how effortlessly he twisted the situation to suit himself, my grandparents wanted to make sure it never happened again. They know how emotions can cloud judgment, how manipulation can make you second-guess even the things you know are right. They didn't just want to protect my money. They wanted to protect me. And I finally understood they weren't just suggesting this for my future. They were making sure that no one, not even my own father, could ever pull something like this on me again. So I agreed. We're looking into financial advisors this week. But that wasn't even the biggest thing that happened. The phone call that changed everything. My granddad and my dad had it out over the phone. It started off civil, at least, that's what I was told. I wasn't on the call, but I didn't need to be. I could hear my granddad shouting from the next room. Apparently, Dad started out trying to justify himself, spinning the same excuses he's been using since this all started. But the second he acted like he had done nothing wrong, Granddad lost it. And when I say lost it, I mean I've never heard him yell like that in my life. He tore into him. Told him flat out that he had failed as a father. That he had abandoned his own daughter just to play house with Jocelyn and Tessa. That he had stolen something meant for me and handed it over like it was nothing. And he did not hold back. Dad, of course, took it about as well as you'd expect. Which is to say, he doubled down. Instead of admitting he screwed up, instead of showing an ounce of regret, he just dug his heels in deeper. He kept insisting that Tessa deserved that money just as much as I did. That I was being ungrateful. That I was selfish. Hearing my granddad fight for me should have felt like a victory. But honestly, the part that hurt the most wasn't even my dad's reaction. It was Jocelyn. She didn't say a word. Not a single text. Not a single call. Nothing. I always thought she was fair, reasonable. When she first became part of our lives, I actually wanted things to work. I wanted a mother figure again. And for a long time, she made me feel like I had one. She was kind. She was patient. I trusted her. I never imagined she would stand by and let something like this happen. But now? Her silence says everything. She hasn't reached out to me. She hasn't tried to stop my dad. She hasn't even acknowledged what's happening. And I can't help but wonder if Tessa wasn't the one benefiting from all of this. Would she have spoken up? Or is she keeping quiet because she knows that as long as she says nothing, her daughter gets a free ride? I don't know. And at this point, I don't care. I should have known better than to expect anyone in that house to have my back. And every day, it becomes clearer I made the right choice cutting them off. But that doesn't make the betrayal any easier to swallow. Dad's last stand. And my dad? He's still on his high horse, acting like I'm the one who did something wrong. He keeps throwing around words like family and responsibility, as if those words actually mean something to him. But I've stopped listening. I don't understand how someone who was once so devoted to me could change so much. I used to look up to him. Now, I barely recognize him. And honestly, I don't know if there's anything left to salvage. But one thing is certain, I'm not giving in. Not this time. Update 2, the breaking point. First off, thank you. To everyone who's supported me, who's helped me see this for what it really is, thank you. Because things just escalated in a way I never saw coming. My dad showed up. At my grandparents' house. And he brought Tessa with him. I wish I was making this up. It was a full-blown spectacle. The moment he walked through the door, he immediately launched into accusations. Said I was turning my back on family. That I was manipulating my grandparents against him. Tessa just stood there, all wide-eyed, looking like she had no idea why she was even there. But I wasn't buying her innocent act anymore. Not after what happened with my education fund. Any guilt or doubt I might have had about keeping the money? Gone. There was no way I was giving her a single cent, not after the circus. Dad went on and on about how I was selfish, about how I didn't understand the importance of family. Which was rich, coming from him. The same man who stole what was meant for me and handed it to Tessa without a second thought. Was now standing in my grandparents' living room, trying to guilt me into sharing their money. It was laughable. And then? Then he did something I never saw coming. He started making legal threats. He actually stood there and said that since he's their son, he has the right to contest their assets. That they were being manipulated by me. That they weren't in their right mind to be making financial decisions. And that he was going to make sure his rights were protected in court. I saw red. My dad, who should have been focused on fixing our relationship, was more concerned about making a legal case for money that wasn't even his. He wasn't here to talk. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to fight over money. And in that moment, I knew. There's nothing left to salvage. This isn't about family to him. It never was. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The last straw. It was the most selfish thing I had ever seen my father do. But my granddad wasn't having it. He shut my dad down immediately. He told him, plain and simple, if he wanted to pursue legal action, he was welcome to try. But it would be a waste of his time. Because my granddad? He knows the law. Everything had already been settled years ago. My dad didn't have a single legal claim to stand on. And the second he realized it, his entire demeanor shifted. All that bravado? That entitlement? The threats? Gone. Without another word, he turned on his heel and walked out the door. And Tessa? She followed behind him like a shadow, silent, expressionless. She didn't even look at me. That was it. If there was ever a shred of doubt in my mind, if there was ever a moment I considered sharing the money with her, it was gone now. I was done being the bigger person. I had already lost too much. My education fund, my father's respect, my place in the family. And I refused to lose anything else. Update 3, the fallout. Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since my last update. Things have been insane. Between dealing with my family drama and preparing to leave for business school, I feel like I haven't had a second to breathe. But I wanted to update you all because, believe it or not, things escalated even more. After my dad's disastrous meltdown at my grandparents' house, my grandma, sweet, soft-spoken, never raises her voice grandma, was furious. I've never seen her like this. She told my dad, in no uncertain terms, that if he ever tried to pull something like that again, she would not hesitate to call the cops. And those legal threats he had been throwing around? She laughed at them. My grandma, who has spent her entire life keeping the peace, laughed in his face. She made it crystal clear, we have the upper hand, and there is absolutely no way he is going to manipulate or intimidate us into anything. My grandparents are sharp. They are not scared of him, and they are not going to let him bully them into submission. That felt good to hear. But the real shock? Jocelyn. She reached out to me. Jocelyn's confession. I wasn't expecting it. Honestly, I thought she would stay silent forever. When I got her text, I assumed she was just going to beg me to reconsider, try to convince me to make things right with my dad and Tessa. I was not in the mood for another guilt trip, so I told her no. But she responded. And this time, she said it wasn't about that at all. I didn't believe her. But I was curious. So I agreed to meet. And when I did, I barely recognized her. Jocelyn, who had always been put together, always composed, she looked exhausted. Like she hadn't slept in weeks. The first thing she did? She apologized. For everything. For standing by while my dad stole my education fund. For not speaking up when she knew what he was doing was wrong. For letting things spiral completely out of control. I didn't know how to feel. I wasn't ready to just forgive her. But at the same time, she meant it. She wasn't making excuses. She wasn't blaming anyone else. She was just owning it. And then she told me something that changed everything. She had tried to speak up. More than once. She had told my dad, directly, that what he was doing was wrong. But every time she did, he brushed her off. Ignored her. Dismissed her concerns, told her she didn't understand. That this was for the good of the family. That Tessa needed the money more than I did. And then she admitted the truth. My dad? He has become obsessed with securing Tessa's future. Obsessed, to the point that he was willing to sacrifice me to do it. And Tessa? She was in on it the entire time. Tessa's true colors. According to Jocelyn, Tessa knew where the money was coming from. She knew it was mine. She knew it had been set aside for my education. And she took it anyway. She never hesitated. Never said, "This isn't right." Never once even pretended to care. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. Any doubt I had, any guilt I had about keeping my grandparents' money? Gone. Tessa didn't care about me. She only cared about what she could take. And then Jocelyn told me something that genuinely shocked me. She's thinking about leaving my dad. Can people really change? I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her, do it. Walk away from the mess she helped create. But another part of me didn't trust her. Because at the end of the day, she stood by and let it happen. She didn't fight for me when it mattered. And now that her life is unraveling, now that she's suffering, now she wants to act? It didn't sit right with me. I told her I appreciated her apology. But it didn't erase the fact that she had let me suffer in silence. And as for my dad? There's nothing left to fix. I'm done with him. Jocelyn didn't try to argue. She just nodded. She told me she was sorry. That she wished she had done more. That she wished it hadn't come to this. She looked so defeated. But I couldn't afford to get wrapped up in her guilt. I'd been burned enough already. Moving forward. After our conversation, I went straight to my grandparents and told them everything. They were just as surprised as I was that Jocelyn had reached out. But my granddad? Did not trust her. And he warned me. She might be sincere now, but she's still connected to your father, he told me. Don't let your guard down. And he's right. As much as I want to believe she's finally seeing the truth, I can't take any chances. And my dad? He's still sending me texts and emails. Still trying to manipulate me. Still insisting that I owe Tessa something. That I need to think about the family. It's laughable. After everything he's done? After all the pain he's caused? He really thinks I'm going to cave? Absolutely not. I'm done being the good daughter who stays quiet and takes the abuse. I've already lost enough. My education fund. My relationship with my father. Even my place in the family. I'm not losing anything else. Not my grandparents. Not the money they gave me. And definitely not my peace of mind. Now, I'm focusing on my future. Business school is right around the corner. And I can't wait to leave all of this behind. Because I've finally realized something. I don't need them. I have my grandparents. And I have myself. And that's enough.